Here and welcome to today's video on indie author business success. For this week, I thought I would talk about how to price your books. And when you're a self-publisher, it can be pretty intimidating to figure out how you're going to actually price your books because you're thinking, how much are people willing to pay? You don't have the benefit of working with a larger publisher where they'll basically just set the price for you. And as a result, you always have to kind of factor that in. And on top of that, you're a self-publisher, so you're having to figure out how to price your books according to that particular reality, because how you price when you're a self-publisher versus if you're with a traditional publisher can differ quite a bit. Part of managing the finances for your self-publishing is that you always have to factor in you have to factor in two different things. One is, what will the market bear in terms of your price? How much money, can you charge before somebody will say, I'm not going to spend any more? And this is true regardless of whether you're doing print or online. But the other thing that you have to consider is, how do you price your books accordingly when you are trying to publish something along the lines of your books, and you're trying to actually make a living off of this. So let's take a look at how you can research that. Let's say that you've decided that you are writing zombie apocalypse fiction, right? I'm just going to put zombie apocalypse fiction here. And we're going to see here are some different books that are available. And in some cases, we're seeing some of them. We're seeing here Invasion Zombie Apocalypse by M.D. Massey. So let's go ahead. I'm gonna right click on this, and we'll go over there, and but you can see here it's $2.99. This one is $0. It's set to free. Some of these others are set to free. I'm assuming that some of these, in this case, they're using a countdown deal or something like that, and that's why they're priced. But let's see here. Let's go down a little bit further and see if we can find some that are maybe. And what's interesting here is that you see in some cases, like, a lot of these are just starting out. So, all right, let's go ahead and look at this one, Divided We Fell. I like this author. He's kind of an interesting one. Okay. Okay, so anyway, we're gonna go here to Invasion Zombie Apocalypse. Now this is fiction, and we're gonna look at nonfiction here in a little bit, but I just kind of wanted to show you fiction first. So here, we have, this author has, for audiobook, $9.95. You typically, with audiobooks, you don't really get to set the price. You have your Kindle for $2.99, and then you have your paperback for $7.99. And this is one of the reasons on here that it shows the price list at $7.99 with the slash and then $2.99. One of the things we're going to talk about in regards to pricing is why you would want to, why you might consider actually publishing print books as a form of pricing strategy. But right now, in this lesson, we're just covering the very basics of pricing. And if we go, here's the second book in the series. I'm just curious to see what the pricing is on this one. So it's $0 for Kindle Unlimited or $3.99 to buy, and then the trade paperback is $12.99. So you notice that he's actually raised the price on the trade paperback by $5. Audio membership is still $9.95. And if we go over here to the Divided America book, and we're just going to take a look at this, we're going to see the same thing. While that's kind of popping up, I'm going to also type in superhero fiction, which is another one I write in. I'm just kind of giving you guys an idea of what the fiction end of things looks like. Of course, it's all blank screen. So here, in this case, this is the whole of the thing. What I want to do is actually go to the specific book. Okay. You can tell I already have these books because I've read them. They're all really good. I do recommend them if you're looking for something funny. So in this case, this author has it as 0 for Kindle Unlimited or $1.99 to buy, or for paperback, it's $9.99. So again, we see this contrast in terms of the stuff. And if we go down here, we see Kindle Edition at $2.99, $2.99. At some point, he'll probably raise his price as he continues the series, but as you can see, it's not a lot. So the question you might ask yourself is, well, how much should I charge my books for? And this is a good question, because when you were trying to determine like what the market will actually bear, it's basically determined. And I'm just going to go here and type in superhero fiction if it lets me. Okay, let's try it this way. Superhero fiction. And I'm going to close that window and close that one. You're basically having to determine what the price will, what kind of price point you're going to be looking at, and you're doing this for both your ebook and your print book. As I mentioned, with the audiobooks, Amazon kind of gets to set the terms for that. Maybe that'll change someday, and you'll get to set your own price for that, but for right now, it's really not that way. And here we have this one, Stellar Book 1. We have $4.99, and then we have $15.99. So $15.99 is probably the print book, and then $4.99 is the ebook. With this one where it's 0 Kindle, it's probably actually more than that. But it's $7.99. So let's go here. The $7.99 is probably the print. So as you can see, with fiction, you kind of have a great range of books. You have, in some cases, some books that are set for 0 for as far as Kindle Unlimited goes, and then you have $3.99 or $4.99 or $7.99. The one thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing your pricing, at least from a Kindle perspective, and we'll talk about this again in the next video, is that you want to keep in mind like what your actual pricing is going to be. Like if it's 35% versus 70%, you want to be thinking about that. So in terms of the royalties you get, we'll talk about that, and I'll use a case study of an example of where I think like an author who priced his Kindle book way too much could have priced it differently, and made more money that way, even though it would have been less money on the price. So yeah, in this case, it's $2.99 and then $7.99. Oh, that's the one person there. Let's see here. It's just taking its sweet time. Internet's a little slow today. All right, so you get the idea anyway in terms of pricing. I don't think I really need to illustrate this any further. Oh, and then of course it came up. But the point being that like when you look at the overall pricing that you want to be thinking about, this can be a good way to do some research. Okay, so it is 0 for Kindle Unlimited or $7.99 to buy. This person is only publishing it as a Kindle book, so they're not doing it as a print book. You will find some authors that do that, and the argument for that would be, well, then I'm not having to pay for like the print cover, and I'm not having to pay for I'm not having to format it for print, so that saves some time. I get that. I will say though that I like with both my fiction and nonfiction, I always set it up so that it's both print and Kindle, and the reason why is because you never know when somebody wants to buy print. And I'll admit, just from a vanity perspective, it's kind of cool to look on my own bookshelf and see my books there. I know that seems a little silly, but and also, I mean, if when we eventually get back to doing things like conventions and stuff like that, it can be nice to have print books on hand to sell. at a convention. You can't really quite do the same thing for an ebook. So, there's arguments 2 and 4, but you want to keep that in mind in terms of your formatting. So let's look at some nonfiction books. Business. Business. Let's see what we get. Because again, we want to be thinking about like how we're going to be publishing stuff. So here for Kindle Edition, it's $13.99 and it's 27, but this is sold by a larger publisher. So no real surprise there. Whereas this one, the one-page marketing plan is $2.99 to buy, and otherwise it's a or like Startups Made Simple. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. In this case, Rich Dad Poor Dad. Let's take a look at his as well. But again, this is sold by Amazon Services. So when it's sold by Amazon Services LLC, that's usually an indicator that it's being sold by a self-publisher for all intents and purposes. And it's a good thing to keep in mind. What we're probably going to see is some similar pricing strategies where the prices are kept down for the ebook end of things, $4.99, $14.99 in the case of the paperback, and $9.95 with the audiobook membership. What this tells us, again, and again, this is set to Kindle Unlimited. I mean, if this person was going wide, he might be putting books out there, in a you might be putting books out there for a larger segment, or like in Barnes and Nobles, he'd probably be pricing it similar. And you can go to Barnes and Nobles or Kobo and take a look. Here, this one is $7.19. It's $32.19. It's $18.70. It's knocked down a little bit for the digital list price, which is $7.99. I'm going to assume this one is, so he's gone wide. So in this case, it might be knocked down a little bit because of on other sites at $7.99, Kindle, who knows? But anyway, that's a good example there of some stuff. So when you're looking at your own pricing, you do want to look at how other people are pricing. The recommendation I'm going to make, though, is that you don't want to let how other people price be the only determinant for how you price your books. The reason why you want to look is because you want to get a sense as to what the market will bear. Some markets will allow you to price your books a little more aggressively or differently than other markets, and you want to keep that in mind. You need to know your market, and part of how you do that is you do market research like this. But you also have to keep in mind, in some cases, like in the case of this, people will spend $7.19 on this book. This author here probably could price their book up to $7.99 and still make a selling. Why aren't they doing it? Well, I mean, chances are the reason they're not doing it is because they think they can only get up to $4.99, and that's kind of the interesting dilemma that faces self-publishers, is where you have people that are like, well, if I publish it much higher, people won't buy it, or if I publish it much higher, I'm competing against the big guys. Well, guess what? You are already competing against the big guys, and while undercutting the big guys in terms of a price can be a useful strategy, it can also get in your way. So you have to know when to price accordingly, and how much you want to price. I will say that depending on the type of genre, it dictates the kind of pricing strategy you're going to take. Again, we're going to talk about this more next time because I think it's worthwhile for you to see that. But for the purposes of this video, I wanted to cover pricing, initial ways that you could do some research in terms of pricing, both in terms of paperback and Kindle. And so this is hopefully giving you some good ideas and some things to think about in terms of how you're approaching your pricing. Always remember that when you're pricing, you do have to think about your long-term strategy. For people who are doing this as a hobby, no, 199, 299 isn't too bad. And I'm not even saying that you couldn't make more money that way, because you can. But sometimes you have to know like what your market will bear, and determine if that's worth your while. And I think that it can be worth your while, to price a bit higher, especially if you want to make a viable income from your book sales. All right, see you next time.